Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time on the disappointing X-Men The Last Stand, aka X3. Now, this is the third film in the Bryan Singer, the initial Bryan Singer X-Men trilogy, but it does not feature Bryan Singer as the director, and he's not involved with the writing at all either. So, it's like this weird movie because it's not by Bryan Singer, but it is a follow-up to X2, and it's a part of the same franchise as X-Men and X2 was. this was this was pretty rough to watch, to be honest. I know there's a few people out there. I know a good friend of mine. He likes this film all right. That's cool. I know there are fans of this movie. I'm definitely not one of them. I have never been a fan of The Last Stand. I was disappointed by the film when I saw it in the theater, and I was disappointed by the film when I saw it again at home video, and I was equally disappointed by the film when I saw it again on Blu-ray. And I had not seen it in a long time, so I thought maybe it would be better, and then I remember it being, but no, it was just as bad. It was just as awful. Now, it's not the worst X-Men film in the franchise. I mean, it would actually get worse from here on out, but it's still not what I'd call a good movie. It was released on May 26th of 2006. It's directed by Brett Ratner, who was pretty much the only director they could finally get to do the movie. They went through a lot of different directors for this film. There was like a whole director roulette. It has a screenplay by Simon Kinberg and Zach Penn, which is a huge problem. This script is a fucking mess. It it's not a very good screenplay. You go from the scripts from the first two films to this, and it's such a fall from grace. It is such an absolute step down. It falls multiple steps down. It stars Hugh Jackman, Halle Berry, Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, Famke Janssen, Anna Paquin, Kelsey Grammer, James Marsden in a brief little cameo role, Rebecca Romijn, Ashmore, uh, Shawn Ashmore, Aaron Stanford, and Vinnie Jones. There's a few other actors as well. There's an actor who plays Angel. Um, his name is Ben Foster, and I believe there's another guy who played Multiple Man, Jamie Madrox. There's a bunch of other people as well who play like little supporting roles as members of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. The score is by John Powell, and it is a really shitty score. Features cinematography by Dante Spinotti, which isn't really much. It's edited by Mark Helfrich, Mark Goldblatt, and Julia Wong. The editing, I guess, is competent. It's average, but it's nothing spectacular. The budget is about $210 million, and it is on the screen. It absolutely is on the screen. And the movie made $459.4 million in the box office. So it was a hit. And early in its development process, it was intended to be directed by Bryan Singer. Bryan Singer, the director of the first two X-Men films, he left the project in July of 2004 in favor of developing Superman Returns. Singer stated he didn't fully have X-Men 3 in his mind, in contrast to a fully formed idea for a Superman film and interest in joining that franchise. By the time of his departure, Singer had only produced a partial story treatment with X2 screenwriters Dan Harris and Michael Dougherty, who accompanied him to Superman Returns. Honestly, I like this more than Superman Returns. Even though this film has problems, I will watch this any day of the week over Superman Returns. And Superman Returns is boring. It doesn't really have the good action bits that this film does. And it's this is depressing too, but Superman Returns is like depressing and twisted. And I honestly, I just wish Bryan Singer made X-Men 3. I wish he did this film instead of Superman Returns. So we had this idea, which is a partial story treatment. Now keep in mind, this idea was just a partial story treatment. I can't really criticize this idea that much because I'm pretty sure it would have been fixed. They would have changed things around. They would have made it better. The treatment focused on Jean Grey's resurrection, which had also introduced the villainous Emma Frost, a role that Bryan Singer wanted to be played by Sigourney Weaver, which is interesting. Sigourney Weaver is Emma Frost? I mean, because normally Emma Frost in the comics is scantily clad supermodel. And Emma Frost, played by Sigourney Weaver, would be an interesting thing. It would have been an interesting casting choice. And maybe you could finally take Emma Frost very seriously and not furiously, because it pisses you off because you see this really powerful telepath and she's dressed like she's a stripper or she's dressed like she's at a Halloween party. So, Frost is an empath manipulating Jean's emotions in the treatment, and just like the finished film, Magneto desires to have control over her. Overwhelmed by her powers, Jean kills herself, but Jean's spirit survives and becomes a godlike creature, which Doherty compared to the Star Child in A Space Odyssey. I don't really like that idea, and I'm pretty sure if they went into the full screenwriting process and producers got involved, they probably would have changed that, because I think that idea is really dumb. I mean, it doesn't really need to be, she doesn't need to be the Star Child. So that was a bit too, that was just really strange. But, honestly, though, I would take whatever they had in mind over what we got. So with Singer gone, Simon Kinberg, who had worked on two other Marvel adaptations for Fox, Fantastic Four and Elektra. Oh my God. I knew there's why the film was a fucking disaster. That's why the script sucked. You had the guy who wrote the Fantastic Four film, which was average at best, and fucking Elektra. The guy who wrote Elektra. One of the worst Marvel comic films ever. So he was hired as a writer in August of 2004. X2 co-writer Zach Penn was separately working on his own draft, and the two joined forces for a combined screenplay in January 2005. Kinberg wanted the Dark Phoenix saga to be the emotional plot of the film, while Gifted would serve as a political focus. Gifted was something I think Joss Whedon worked on. The duo had 7 months to complete the Last Stand script, and during the first week of work, completed the first 80 pages, consisting of the first 2/3 of the plot. The writers had to fight Fox's executives to retain the Phoenix plot as the studio only wanted the Cure story and provided a reason for Magneto's conflict with the X-Men. Honestly, I side with the studio. The studio was right this time around. This film did not need the Dark Phoenix subplot because it didn't earn it, and it was rushed. And if you're the Dark Phoenix subplot should have been its own plot, not a subplot. It should have been its own plot. If you're gonna have the Dark Phoenix saga, it should be its own film, not shoehorned in this other plot with Mutant Cure. So honestly, the producers and the studio were right on the money. If they got what they wanted and it was just the Mutant Cure and it was just that and there was a little bit more action, then honestly, I wouldn't mind the film. Wouldn't piss me off so much because wouldn't have this stupid shit where we kill off Professor X and we kill off Cyclops and we bring the Dark Phoenix saga to life in a half-assed way. So yeah. Surprisingly, the studio had the right idea. Fox, 20th Century Fuckface, knew what they were doing here. But the disputes made them not add much for Jean Grey to do in most of the film's second half, as the executives considered the tone of the Phoenix story too dark for a mainstream summer movie, and that its appeal would be limited to hardcore fans rather than a general audience. First off, I'm a hardcore fan, and I hated this. I hated that this Phoenix storyline was just shoved in here. It was just thrown in there and didn't really have much thought put into it. And stating the Phoenix was not a firebird-shaped cosmic force because it didn't fit into the world, and that Cyclops did not have as much screen time as Wolverine because the latter was more popular. And with Cyclops, you can't see his eyes. Well, with the studio there, I fucking disagree with him. I mean, I gotta say right off the bat, they don't get Cyclops, and that's probably one of the main reasons why Cyclops sucks so much in these movies. Because they clearly don't understand his character. And they say he can't see his eyes, so he's a harder character to relate to for the audience. Cyclops has always been one of my favorite X-Men, ever since the comics and the cartoons, so I call bullshit on that. Yeah, he's hard to relate to for the audience because he's portrayed as a fucking raging dickhead and a pansy in these movies. And no wonder he's not popular, because who wants to, oh, the fucking Boy Scout. Yeah, the Boy Scout of the team. Yeah, he's I love that guy. So killing Cyclops is Fox's decision based on the availability of the actor, James Marsden, who was cast in Superman Returns. The studio considered killing him off screen with a dialogue reference, but Kinberg and Penn insisted that Jean kill him, emphasizing their relationship. Xavier's death was intended to match the impact of Spock's demise in Star Trek II, as Fox felt the script called for a dramatic turning point. It did not have any of the impact that death did. At all. It's honestly, it didn't. It just pissed me off, and it felt like it was just a stupid slasher movie type death, where it's like a sequel to a slasher film, and one of the main characters gets killed off early on in the movie in a stupid, shitty way. It had none of the impact that death had. Part of it was definitely because Patrick Stewart's performance in this really wasn't that great, and I didn't earn it. It was just fucking random bullshit. It was like, oh, the Phoenix is gonna kill Professor X. And it didn't matter anyway, because the spirit ended up in the body of this other guy, so he was still technically alive. But regardless, just like Star Trek 2, but Star Trek 2 still has impacted this day. This was just half-assed, like most of the movie. Just lazy. Kinberg and Penn were originally cautious, but grew to like the idea of killing Xavier. Decided to write a post-credit scene suggesting the character's return for a sequel. Like I said, this movie also was a film that completely fucked the continuity of the entire franchise so badly that Bryan Singer had to come back and press the reset button. Because what the fuck else was he going to do? In this current timeline, Professor X is dead, Cyclops is dead, Jean is dead. I mean, Magneto has been cured. Mystique has been cured. So we had to completely just erase all of this bullshit. And so, as the studio was simultaneously developing X-Men Origins Wolverine, yeah, because that was a great idea, they developed this and X-Men Origins Wolverine at the same time. So that's why both of these films are lazy as hell and have rushed scripts and rushed storylines and just feel like a total rush job, because they were being both these films were being developed at the exact same time. What were you thinking, 20th Century Fox? So limitations were set on which mutants could be used for cameo appearances in X-Men 3, in an attempt to avoid risking character development for Wolverine. What character development? There's barely any character development in that film other than the development for Wolverine and maybe Sabretooth. Gambit was considered for both the convoy scene being freed by Magneto in the Battle of Alcatraz, along with the X-Men, but the writers did not want to introduce a fan favorite character and not be able to do him justice. Ha 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 ha! Ha ha! That is hilarious, because he sure as hell wasn't done justice in X-Men Origins Wolverine. All he was a cameo in that film. So the Kinberg region, there just wasn't enough space. Consider Gambit would only work with as much screen time as Beast. I agree. Alan Cumming had been uncomfortable with the long hours he had to take with the prosthetic makeup as Nightcrawler, but he planned to return for the sequel. But the part of Nightcrawler was so minimal, and so the studio felt it was not worthwhile to go through the long and costly makeup process, and his character was cut, which is too bad. I would have liked to see Nightcrawler in some of the action sequences. You know what? You could have replaced Kitty Pryde Shadowcat with Nightcrawler, because she kind of just shows up out of nowhere here as like one of the main X-Men. And I'm like, where did she come from? Ellen Page? I don't remember her ever being one of the main X-Men by the time X2 rolled around. Why wasn't Nightcrawler in that role? In February 2005, okay, actually, here we're going into the director shuffle, which is nuts. So new contracts for returning cast members are made, and as the actors and actresses, it's only originally signed on for 2 films. So Hugh Jackman's contract included the approval of director, and initially he offered the position to Darren Aronofsky, whom he had just finished filming on The Fountain with. But he eventually turned it down. Joss Whedon, whose comic book Gifted was being integrated into the film's plot, turned down the offer because he was working on a Wonder Woman movie that never happened. Can you imagine that? A Joss Whedon Wonder Woman movie. You know, I would honestly rather see that than what we're going to get this year. Definitely. Rob Bowman and Alex Proyas are also rumored to be up for consideration, though Proyas personally turned it down, citing feuds with 20th Century Fox president Tom Rothman while producing iRobot. Zack Snyder was also approached. Oh my god, Zack Snyder. But he was already committed to the 300. But this is the Snyder from this era who actually knew what he was doing, so that might have been interesting. Peter Berg was also considered to direct the film, but he also turned down the job. In February 2005, with still no director hired, Fox announced a May 5th, 2006 release date, but that was eventually pushed to May 26th on Memorial Day weekend. They signed Matthew Vaughn to direct the film, and Vaughn is actually the one responsible for casting Kelsey Grammer as Beast, Dania Ramirez as Callisto, and Vinnie Jones as Juggernaut. But family issues led him to withdraw before filming began. Vaughn was also cautious of the tight deadlines imposed by Fox, stating he didn't have time to make the movie that he wanted to make. And also John Bohr, fucking guy who did Die Hard, Good Day to Die Hard. He was also considered to direct the film at one point, but thankfully that didn't happen. And Brett Ratner, who was previously considered to direct the film in 1990, the first X-Men movie in 1996, he replaced Vaughn. So, yeah, Ratner was not the first choice. The other choices were interesting. I don't know what some of them would have brought to the film. The main problem is that Fox had everyone behind the eight ball, so whoever got the job would have had to really rush themselves and not be able to make the movie they wanted to make. Because Fox wasn't being patient. And honestly, Fox should have waited anyway. They should have waited till after Singer was done with Superman Returns and then done X-Men 3 with Bryan Singer at the helm and whoever he wanted in the cast and all of that. Because I'm sorry, Fox. This is a mistake. They wanted money. This is all about money. They wanted the X-Men money. The first two films were big hits for them. So they wanted to rush this in theaters in 2006 and get money. And they got the money, but they fucked the franchise in the process. And fucked over the fans who had been waiting for an actual proper sequel to X2. I loved X2. It's a fantastic film. It still holds up really well. It's an excellent sequel. I loved the teaser for Phoenix at the end, and I was looking forward to seeing the saga done right on the big screen in the third film. But that doesn't happen here. And what get is dick and blue balls. So, yeah, as you could see, and as you could probably say in the comments down below, I'm not a fan of this film. Now, this movie, even though I thought it was pretty poor for the most part, it did have some pros. Some of them were definitely the visual effects. The Golden Gate Bridge sequence was well done. The CGI was pretty jaw-dropping for back in the day, for 2006. And it still looks really good. It's still a great-looking effect. The other bits of visual effects were well done as well. The look of the Danger Room sequence, it was nice to finally see that. It was really a lot of fun to see Colossus and Wolverine work together and do the cannonball move, where Colossus takes a Wolverine and throws him at a target. It's probably not called cannonball, it's called something else, but it was really nice to see that move, because I remember seeing that move a lot in the comics and in the cartoon. It was the effects for Angel were really well done. For Warren, the sort of visual effects that they did for a lot of the other action sequences were well put together. So the visual effects were definitely a standout for this film. And the makeup effects. Mystique, as usual, is great. The other makeup effects you see by some of the other mutants, those were well done too. Beast, the makeup of Beast is really, really well done. It's great. It's a great makeup job. And so, yeah, I mean, those are definitely some pros. Some of the performances by the cast I thought were good. I mean, what's interesting about this film is it seems like there's a lot of performances by the cast. It's like half of the performances are good and half of them aren't. It's like it's divided. It's weird. So I thought the performances by Famke Janssen, Kelsey Grammer, Shawn Ashmore, Ben Foster, and Ellen Page, I thought they were noteworthy, especially Kelsey Grammer. He was perfectly cast as Beast. He was a lot of fun as a character. Famke Janssen probably delivered her best performance as Jean Grey in the entire franchise here. She did a great job portraying the tortured aspect of this character, where Jean is trapped inside of this monstrous split personality in Phoenix. And admittedly, the action, when it is there, was a lot of fun. The fight between Wolverine and Marrow in the forest, and Wolverine also fucks up some other mutants in the forest as well with his claws. That was a fun sequence. And the climactic battle sequence in the battle for Alcatraz. That was enjoyable. I actually got to finally see Iceman become Iceman and take out Pyro in a crowd-pleasing scene. So there was a lot of action in the climax, and that was definitely a lot of fun to see, but at the same time, it didn't have as much impact as it could have had because of all the other problems that the film has. To me, personally, the cons far outweigh the pros with this movie. So, one of the cons is definitely the direction by Brett Ratner. It is a huge step down. It is it's a flight of stairs down from Bryan Singer. There's no sense of style or flair here, and there's no emotion either. There's scenes where you're supposed to be sad, or there's supposed to be really intense emotions, but because Ratner's direction is so flat and uninspired, the only time that he really seems to know what he's doing is when he's directing an action sequence. Any other sequence, that it just doesn't work. It just falls flat on its ass. So when Professor X dies and Wolverine and Storm are sad that he's gone, there's no impact because Brett Ratner doesn't know how to direct scenes with emotional impact or emotional weight. The script doesn't help either. The script by Zach Penn and Simon Kinberg. Simon Kinberg is probably responsible for most of the film's problems. It's a guy who wrote fucking Elektra. So, I mean, the script itself is a mess. It's muddled. It's got pacing issues. It doesn't understand certain characters. Like Rogue just all of a sudden starts acting like a total bitch in the beginning of the film. Just a total bitch. And then Iceman is being a dick because he's essentially cheating on her with Shadowcat, with Kitty Pryde. And it just is like, what were they doing here? And what were they thinking? Like, this just doesn't work. And it burns the Phoenix storyline to a crisp. It kills off Cyclops, Professor X, and Jean in bullshit ways. Cyclops, I understand, he wasn't really the best portrayed character in the series, but they were starting to get him right in the second movie, because he actually had a believable relationship with Jean. You actually did buy that they loved each other, and he should have been in the film more. And then in X3 in The Last Stand, he gets killed off, and it's just like, wow, well that was fucking pointless. That was lame. Did you have to kill off Cyclops so James Marsden wouldn't be in the film that much? You could have just saved him. Maybe he just went off and he's a recluse somewhere because Jean is dead. And then have him come back for some triumphant return or something in the climactic battle sequence. You could have done that. That would have been better. That would have been a better use of James Marsden's cameo role than killing him off for fucking shock and awe. And all it did is piss me off. Honestly, it's like this movie's poster. It had like a up close of Wolverine's claws when they're not when they're retracted, but when they pop out. And so it's like X3. You know what they should have? They should have a picture of Wolverine, one middle claw poking out, and it's just a middle finger. It's just like X middle finger. Fuck you. Well, fuck you, X-Men 2 fans. Here's this bullshit. Yeah. Enjoy. So if that isn't bad enough that you kill off Cyclops, Professor X, and Jean in bullshit ways, it ruins the Juggernaut and makes him a goddamn joke. Vinnie Jones was miscast. And right from the beginning, when you first see Juggernaut, he's wearing this stupid looking fucking suit, which is another problem. The costume design, except for a few moments here and there, like X-Men, like a Wolverine suit and some of the other suits some of the other X-Men are wearing, is pretty shitty. Phoenix is just a red dress or something. Like, what the hell is that? That's fucking lazy as hell. All she's wearing is red. She's just a lady in red. That's all it is, the lady in red. Where's the Phoenix? Where is all that? And Juggernaut looks like he has a fucking piece of shit on his head. Which makes sense, he is a piece of shit, so hey, it works. It's fitting, it's rather fitting that he wears a giant piece of shit on his head because he is a giant piece of shit. First time we see him, he's saying lines like, I gotta take a piss. You're like, oh great. Yeah. That's the great first impression for the Juggernaut. I gotta take a piss. Yeah, piss all over yourself, you fucking piece of shit. Wannabe Juggernaut. It's a fucking joke. Gotta take a piss. And the stupid, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. Ugh. The stupid mutant cure plot, which I never liked, I never gave a shit about, I didn't care about, drags too much of the storyline down and the film down, hurts the film's pacing, because I don't fucking care. I never wanted to see the mutant cure plot. That sounds like some... Honestly, it's too early for that, and it's your typical Hollywood lazy bullshit plotline I never wanted to see in an X-Men movie. I don't need this cure bullshit. Can I have a cure for this shitty film? Is that possible? And the film's also full of cringe-inducing lines like, "Oh, my stars and garters." I don't. That might be a line quoted from the cartoon. If it is, my bad. I haven't seen the '90s animated series in a long time. At least all of it. But it just doesn't translate well in live action. And the facepalm line where President Ducksworth, because it's the same actor who plays Mr. Ducksworth in The Mighty Ducks, he says, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." And I'm like, fuck me. Are you kidding me? With that lazy fucking bullshit, hacking, cliched fucking line of dialogue? Really? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned? You know what else? Hell hath no fury like a fan scorned, because you fucking scorned me with this shitty fucking sequel, which reams me up the ass with this bullshit I didn't ask for, and fucks over the Dark Phoenix storyline, and gives me a shitty follow-up to an excellent sequel. And yeah, so hell hath no fury like a fan scorned. That's more like it. Fuck. I mean, this movie isn't totally pointless, and there are worse films in this franchise, but this probably is without a doubt the most disappointing and the most frustrating to me, because it's just such a shitty follow-up. It's like I've been waiting for gold, and what I get is shit. I don't want shit! So, the pacing is also a problem. It's a lame fuck for about an hour, because it has the Phoenix stuff, which is done poorly, the mutant cure, which I don't care about, and there's like maybe like a couple bits of action where Magneto lifts some cars and stuff and manages to rescue Mystique, which that's another problem. You have Mystique, she was established as a badass and a really cool character in the last film, and then you inject her with a cure, and she's gone for most of the movie, and we're stuck with these fucking reject Brotherhood of Mutants, like Porcupine Man, and this a really shitty version of Psylocke, and this other woman who looks like, who's got this stupid punk haircut, and she's like got sonic powers. I mean, God, I mean, they were really bad. and like some guy who's like a gecko or some shit. So you basically cut Mystique out of most of the film for these fucking characters, for these fucking rejects. Thank you. Thank you so much, The Last Stand. So, it's a lame fuck for about an hour until Wolverine starts kicking mutant ass in the woods, but also this pacing really harms the climactic action sequence at Alcatraz because it makes it honestly feel like it's heartless. And like, what's the point to this? Because the pacing is so miserable, and a large part of it is because of the script. The writing is the main culprit for this problem. Another big problem is the score. Like, what the hell is this score by John Powell? I know you can do better, John Powell. This is lazy. It rips off Mask of Zorro for what feels like a million times. Seriously, listen to the main theme that they use for that John Powell uses and put together for Jean and Wolverine. It's almost note for note the same as one of the main themes from Mask of Zorro by James Horner. It steals from other scores too, like Danny Elfman's Spider-Man or Batman, Jerry Goldsmith's work on Star Trek, and John Williams' Superman. And when it doesn't steal or plagiarize other composers and their work, it's a bland, forgettable, and over-the-top score, which is too bombastic at times to the point it's laughable, or it just doesn't have any impact. Or it's just a combination of stuff you've already heard before and heard done better in better movies. Speaking of things that should have been better, the performances by a lot of the cast members. Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, Hugh Jackman, James Marsden, Anna Paquin, and Halle Berry. These performances are either surprisingly hammy or just downright half-assed. Ian McKellen is way too hammy here. Brett Ratner clearly didn't know how to rein him in. Patrick Stewart seems like he doesn't give a shit and was just here for a paycheck. Same thing for Hugh Jackman. This is one of the worst performances I've seen from Patrick Stewart in a film. Easily. And also the writing makes Professor X seem like an ass. It's this whole sort of thing where he's controlled Jean this whole time and basically kept her in check with mind blocks. And it kind of reminded me of the way that the writers made Professor Loomis in Halloween 5. Not as much of an asshole, but still kind of an asshole to me. Which I'm like, I understand why he did what he did, but it just seemed out of the blue because none of this was established in the previous films whatsoever. And Hugh Jackman especially, this is one of the worst performances I've seen from him. He's going through the motions. He's just going through the motions, doing it for a paycheck. The scene where he's supposed to be sad for Professor X dying, that is just terrible. It's just like, and then cuts into the funeral, and I'm like, that was it? After Jean died, he was a mess, and Professor X dies, and it's just like, it's pathetic. It really is. James Marsden, of course, he was just there for a bit role, but he just sleepwalking through the role. Anna Paquin's doing the same. Halle Berry is like, I'm too popular. I'm too big of a star to be in this type of movie. So she just lazily saunters throughout the film and doesn't really deliver much of a performance. She doesn't really have a lot to do either, but it's not like she puts a lot of effort into it. It's not Catwoman bad, but it's not really that great either. And speaking of things that aren't great, the CGI effects on the young Professor X and Magneto in the beginning. I mean, holy hell, that's straight out of the Uncanny Valley. This is a distracting way to start your film with this really awful looking CGI of young Magneto and young Professor X. And the tone. The tone was a huge problem. One of the biggest problems next to the script. It's way off the mark for this type of film and its plot. It needed to take itself a bit more seriously, considering the big stakes and the sacrifices that were made. I'd be okay if you had some one-liners here and there, like when Wolverine's fighting the guy who heals himself and he kicks him in the balls and he says, "Grow those back." I'd be okay if you had a fun one-liner now and then to break up the seriousness and the grittiness and all of that. But if you're trying to have a dark and gritty plot where you kill off a lot of members of the X-Men, you can't have lines like, "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch," and this other type of these lines of dialogue that just don't really mesh with the tone that you're trying to have. I mean, it's just, it makes it a clusterfuck. It makes it kind of a hard film to sit through because it's all over the place. It's not only all over the place with its script, it's all over the place with its tone, it's all over the place with its performances, because half of them are good, half of them are competent, and half of them aren't. And you have a shitty score, direction that doesn't really add much to the film unless it's an action sequence. And really, what you have is a movie that is in a lot of ways kind of like Spider-Man 3, because you have all these fucking villains and all this fucking shit crammed into one movie, with not much care or thought put into it. And then it's also kind of like Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice, because you have all these unnecessary deaths that happen that the film didn't earn. But yeah, I really don't know what else to say about X-Men: The Last Stand. I've said enough about it already. I don't want to talk about this film anymore. I'll say this: I will take this over films like The Wolverine or X-Men Origins or even X-Men First Class, which I like to call X-Men First Ass. But because at least it does have some nice bits of action, and like I said, it has some good visual effects, and I like some of the performances, and so there is some good here. But god damn, this is still a really disappointing misfire of a sequel. And I really don't have a desire watching it again anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, even the Danger Room scene was disappointing, and I was looking forward to seeing that for a long time because they teased it in the first two films and it never happened. And then when you finally see it, it's forgettable. So, and that's kind of how the film is. It's a forgettable movie. It's a forgettable sequel. And this Dark Phoenix storyline deserves so much better than this forgettable, shitty sequel. Anyway, I don't know what else to say. And I know I said that already, but I really don't know. I got nothing else to say now, except if I was going to rate the film out of 5 stars, I would give it 2 out of 5. 2 out of 5 stars. It's your typical poor, disappointing, lackluster sequel. But anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.